First of all, thank you very much for attending our presentation webinar on evaluating your innovation practice using future scenarios. Just a quick introduction. My name is Kamal Hassan, and I am the CEO of Innovation 360, based in Dubai. We are an innovation management consultancy. And today's presentation will be mainly focused on future scenarios and how scenario planning will help your innovation practice and building your future business. So before we start, I would like to launch a quick poll around how often have you used scenarios in planning or making decisions in your job. So we have about 18% never used it or rarely used, and 9% rarely used it. And obviously, there's somebody in the audience that uses all the time. So hopefully, the individual that uses all the time could help us out, clarify a few things as well. Okay. So quickly, just wanted to do a few definitions. Trend is a direction in which a relevant condition, output, process, or general tendency is emerging or changing. This could be in a market, in behaviors, technologies, or capabilities. However, scenarios is a story that describe a future or a possible future. Scenarios are typically based on emerging trends, and their its relevance and impact on the occurrence of these type of trends. So the characteristic of scenarios are threefold. One, it should have a result from a mixture of different perspectives. It also reflects both quantitative and quantitative aspects of the trends that emerge from. Okay, and then finally, they are different from forecasts, and they don't require 100% agreement from everyone that to convince them based on trend analysis. So in a nutshell, trends are driving scenarios, and scenarios are stories in the possible future. All trends have two types. Type number one is what we call drivers, and the other type is solutions. Drivers have two main characteristics or two main subcomponents, which are mega forces and changing stakeholders or customers' needs. Mega forces are typically economic, political, social, or cultural forces that impacts the drivers and overall the trends. Changing in behavior or changing in needs are mainly focused on changing influencers and expectations and customer channels and suppliers' needs in a given situation. Also, the driver type is what we call solutions. There are two types of solutions. One is emerging substitutes and emerging capabilities. An example of emerging substitutes are what we call new offers. Or an example of emerging capabilities are new technologies, skills, and competencies, etc. Let's talk a little bit details of what a driver. A driver are concepts, challenges, behaviors, even technologies that likely to call for new sets of metrics and new ways of solving problems to affect the demand in the near or far future. So they drive changes and behaviors. Solutions, on the other hand, are emerging trends that are being developed to tackle the challenges presented by the drivers. Simple. As I described in the previous slides, the old trends are divided into either drivers or on solutions. The way to develop scenarios from trends, it's simple process, but and rather also complicated at the same time. The first part is you plot the trends on the impact and certainty quadrant, and then you stretch or you plot these trends on a time frame or a timeline, and against impact and certainty factors. So we'll see some example soon. So when you plot the trends on the quadrants and then you stretch them into a timeline, in order to build scenarios, the trends that lands on the specific already happening quadrants, they must be included in your scenario story. As you can see, we highlighted that the scenarios must include these trends and these zones. Why? Because scenarios are building on the scenario building on trends that are currently already happening, and then predicting whether these trends will continue in the near future or far future. Okay. So just to summarize how to develop scenarios, we group the trends into drivers and solutions, as we highlighted before, and then from drivers and solution we also identify if they are mega forces or changing customer needs or emerging substitutes or emerging capabilities. However, before we build the scenarios, we also need to pick trends that span across both categories, drivers and solutions. And we also require to understand how the trend will evolve, already happening near term or far future. These are very important factors to understand, or to when you're developing your scenarios in the future. So the first one is they have to span across both types of categories, and also they have to require understanding how they evolve either in the near future or the far future. Also, you need to ask two main questions. Judging from the trend, what will be the typical consumer or customer expectation that could change the behavior? By combining similar different trends and answering these questions, we typically formulate the scenario story. And at the end, once we formulate the scenario story, we can also test the occurrence of these scenarios or factors, and test for differentiation, and test for the decision making. And we'll show you how that would work in an example. Okay. How familiar are you with grouping driving forces and emerging trends in your industry? Have you practiced this in your industry? This is a typical exercise, in my opinion, and many organizations practice for field analysis and drivers that changing their organization. Let's take a brief example of a retail and banking case study. Just remember, this is just not really an exclusive or exhaustive research on this bank or this case study. It's just an illustrative to demonstrate the methodology. Okay, so example of trends in the framework or in the banking case study. Okay, well, first thing, there are two main drivers in the banking industry. One is the mega force, and geopolitical and social economic issue will affect the financial services sector, and mainly the retail bank. There's many forces we believe that will affect the retail banking industry. Okay. Then the second driver is the changing needs. Customer demanding a different kind of experience from the bank, and shareholders and other interested parties are becoming increasingly uncertain about the future of their assets. In the solutions part, there are a few emerging capabilities. For example, the growth of technological solutions in banking, changing the retail banking channels, and the skills needed to deploy banking services are also changing. In addition, there are emerging substitutes such as disruptive innovation that are creating new alternative banking solutions. Most of these alternatives are simple or fast to use, and we'll discuss a few examples in that industry. Okay, if we take these trends and plot them on the impact certainty quadrant, we see examples here. Analytics get real-time, and mobility becomes priority for a retail bank. Demand for online banking is set to grow. Consumers are seeking greater customization when it comes to their services and transactions. Alternative currency are emerging. Customer will gravitate toward simplicity of services, and there will be a growing dominance of Generation Y consumers demographics. In addition, transparent corporate governance and risk management issues will likely key focus areas. But as you can see, they are all high impact and high certainty factors or trends from this graph. Now, if we take this and plot them over a timeline, you notice a lot of these trends are falling in the already happening category. So, with the exception of one that are in the near future, and that is alternative currencies. We don't see yet big trends in alternative currencies, but there are some. So, for example, the BitCash. The BitCash is an alternative currency based on online transactions and mobility that is actually we forecast that it might happen in the near future. So if we wanted to build the scenarios for a bank, we would typically pick trends from this quadrant and combine near future or future trends to create some sort of scenarios and a story. Here is an example. Well, first, we need to, before we go and tell the story, we need to judge these trends based on the three components, as they are the changing stakeholder needs, or are they emerging as new capabilities or new substitutes. So let's take scenario number one, and we are simplifying the scenario here. The consumers' nomic expectation will be strong. Consumers will demand more customer services or customized services. Banks will therefore be embedded into the lives of the customer. Customer relation will be less transactional, but will seek to peep into the life of the customers. What we have highlighted for you here is the changes in customer needs or stakeholder needs, and that's one of the factors or one of the preconditions for building your scenario. Another scenario is deregulated banking. There will be an introduction of alternative currencies and platforms. Money will change in definition, and people will have to power trade in totally digitized currencies, which may not have any physical representations. Conventional trade and payment will be made by these currencies beyond the reach of national governments. Actually, these are type of currencies that we've started to see. However, there more be enforced or be traded in the very near future. And we highlighted as an emerging capabilities or substitutes as well. So these two scenarios that we read here and we presented represent an example of how to build scenarios for your organization. This is very simplified for the sake of our webinar, but requires a lot of research and careful definitions of these trends and a careful analysis of the trends over timeline and impact uncertainty. Okay, finally, what you need to do is to take these trends, or I'm sorry, to take the scenarios and test for the quality of these scenarios. There will be three types of tests. One we call occurrence factor, the other is differentiation factor, and decision-making utility. When you build your scenario, like scenario number one, the context, the banking, you need to test what is the accuracy factor for such a scenario. High, medium, low. Will it also have a differentiation factor for the industry? And will it impact decision making as well? So for you to pursue a scenario and build your innovation, if you follow this process by identifying trends and then plotting these trends to identify the ones that are already happening or the near future or in the far future, and then build your scenarios by asking questions and driving change and substituting or impacting the industry with emerging substitutes and capabilities, and finally testing for these three factors. At this point, you can, with certain certainty, determine the scenarios that impact your industry. So how do you use scenario in your business? We believe that scenarios and scenario planning are very relevant for your innovation framework and innovation processes. In a simple language, they are very relevant and important development for new ideas, for transformation of your organization. They also impact three areas in your four areas in your organization. They impact your strategy, they impact your enablers, the tools and the technology that drives your strategic plans. They impact your leadership position, your capabilities, your human resources, your talent, and your innovation culture. And they also impact the way you implement the needed strategic plan and the innovation implementation that you are pursuing. So scenarios are extremely important for implementation of your innovation strategy and optimization of your innovation strategy. Each scenario has optimal strategy, which dictates what the enablers, the leadership, and the execution framework in order to reach to the best results. Evaluating your current innovation strategy with scenarios require answering the following 5 questions, or you answering the following thing. Are it experimentation by having limited fixed cost infrastructure? Business model is adaptable and poised to test for assumptions. Adaptable to an emergent strategy rather than fixed and deliberate strategy. Learns and adapts rather than assume and insist. And hires and emphasizes skills that deal with handling uncertainty and spotting signals rather than just current core competencies. The current and optimal future are quite different. Current innovation, along the 4 dimensions, the strategy, enabler, leadership, and execution, will help you analyze where you are currently now. But optimal innovation strategy with scenario planning and trend spotting benchmark you against practices needed for winning and disrupting the boundaries in your industries. If you ask these 5 questions that we asked earlier in relation to your current strategy versus in relation to your optimal future innovation strategy, you will be able to identify the gap between the current and the future. So what we are emphasizing here, that most companies tend to innovate around their current situation or current capabilities. However, the most optimal and disruptive innovation comes when you innovate around future scenarios. We promote and we basically emphasize within our relationship with our partners and customers that to drive disruptive innovation and optimal innovation, it has to be built around future scenarios rather than current capabilities. Current capabilities will give you improvements to your processes and your product and services, versus innovating around future scenarios will disrupt the industry and give you a competitive advantage. Here is an example of Optimum's innovation strategy and option for scenario in an example for your deregulated banking industry. Innovation governance system is more of function-based, also creating an autonomous business unit to compete with potential a new entrance to digital currency space. These are ideas for you people who are in the banking industry. Allowing knowledge transferring from existing business to a new autonomous separate business unit, and many different examples as well. Coming to an end to this, I would like to open the discussion for any question and answers, and see if you have any question that I can help you with. You can type in the question in the chat, and I'll be able to answer. Yes, we have a question from Ahmed Yahya. Yes, do we have examples in healthcare? Of course, and we'll be able to email that to you after the seminar. Any questions other than? Well, as I mentioned, I have that there are few ideas and trends emerging in the banking industry, and we will be able to share this presentation with you. However, the purpose of the presentation is not to discuss the specific innovation or the specific emerging scenarios or trends in the banking industry, but rather demonstrate how you build these scenarios and what is the methodology of extracting scenarios from trends and building your innovation. Yes, this sounds, and it actually look like a strategic planning by scenarios. The benefit of doing strategic planning by scenarios, it prepares you for the future rather than the current situation. Scenario planning are truly replacing or augmenting strategic planning. We have seen many organizations start to include scenario development or scenario planning as a way for building their strategy and innovation frameworks. We will look into some examples in the electronic banking, and we'll send it over to you. We're actually, Ahmed, we are talking about future situations. The scenario planning, you mainly look into the near future or the far future. And that's the interest of executives, is to predict or to prepare for possible scenarios in the future for their businesses and companies. Excellent. We will package this presentation with more examples and send it over to all the attendees.